Alright, yeah, I should have expected that. Sly Cooper is a game about sneaking. It's a game about thieving, a tale of childhood trauma, upholding familial values, and a single newspaper headline writer that really just needs to be fired. I mean, come on now. Released deep in the trenches of every developer and their mom desperately hoping they've got the next console mascot to rival the Titans, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is a game that's always kind of sat in the back of my mind as a classic I should probably play at some point, but never really found the time to. So now, since I based this whole channel around kinda this whole idea, I'm going to finally play this game and determine if Sly Cooper is still a good game, because clearly I hold absolute total authority over all things video game from 1997 to 2010. A funny number. We open in Paris with the goal of infiltrating the police headquarters and stealing a file for reasons we don't yet know. Not so fast though, we've got control of our character, which means I need to break away from the plot to give my opinions on the controls of a 21-year-old game. Sly generally handles very well, but at times can be a little loose. Actual movement feels very solid, and we can even choose the inversion of the horizontal camera. I thought it was odd that there wasn't an option for the vertical camera until I realized we have no vertical control over the camera. Like, at all. In any other game, I would hate this design choice, but they do a good enough job of it here that it never became a problem for me, even though I was constantly trying to tilt the camera down on my own to no avail. Other than that, the controls are pretty basic as far as platformers go. We can jump, we can run, and we can swing our little stick around to break stuff. The main difference, something so absolutely revolutionary that I guess the developers thought no child could ever wrap their minds around it and they just needed to be constantly stopping the game to point it out, is everything mapped to the circle button. All over the game, these little blue sprites show up. Anywhere they are, hitting circle activates a
super sneaky master thief move.
These include rail grinding, landing on points, turning actually invisible, and even sliding along a wall. I guess no one else in this universe ever thought that balancing on a narrow ledge makes it easier to walk across. We do also have some other actions mapped to triangle, but I'll get to those later. Overall, my one complaint about the controls is super minor. Occasionally, the game will need you to do some super sneaky moves in some high-octane situations. Maybe it's just me, but I found that these often just kind of failed. As if the game decides, no, you didn't press that button actually. I'll talk about it more way later on, but keep it in mind while I make some silly jokes about the story. We sneak through some vents, avoid looking down, crack open a safe, and before you know it, we've got what we came for. The only police officer in the world shows up, definitely is actually trying to shoot us here and not just venting some frustrations, and we make a clean getaway. Now we get some explanation as to what's going on here. Turns out Sly Cooper comes from a long line of family thieves, but don't worry, our anti-hero isn't too anti. These thieves only steal from the bad guys. They've got a book, the Thievius Raccoonus, where they write down all their super fancy tricks to teach future generations. Unfortunately, only stealing from bad guys tends to upset the people most likely to commit crimes back at you, so Sly's family is murdered brutally right in front of him. The book is broken into 5 parts and stolen, and Sly is left with some repressed issues that'll come out decades later in therapy. Now an orphan, Sly befriends a turtle and a hippo. These 3 are tragically never adopted and turn to a life of crime. This whole backstory is really just about the failure of the systems in place for orphan children if you think about it. Now adults, Sly decides it's time to get his family's book back, which means taking on the Fiendish Five, supposedly the 5 most evil criminals in the whole world responsible for countless deplorable acts. We start with a little frog. I really love these cutscenes, even though they don't have subtitles. The style, Sly's narration, the artwork, it all just feels nice and gets me legitimately excited for what more this game has to offer. Moving on, we have our first proper level, Raleigh's Stormy Island Fortress. There are 5 zones to this game, which makes sense, and with the exception of the final zone, they all function largely the same. We show up and make our way to the bad guy's home, which gets us a key. This in turn gives us access to the first few missions for more keys, unlocking the second set of missions for the final keys, which gives us access to the boss. There are always 7 keys per world, so 7 missions if you include the lead-up section. I say this going into things not as a criticism, but more so as a warning. Only the final zone deviates from this pattern, so don't expect the other 4 to really rock your socks off with what you're expected to do. You go in, you get 7 keys, you fight the boss, and then you leave. Where this game really shines is in actually getting those 7 keys. Like with Jak and Daxter, there are a lot of missions in this game, and I can't talk about all of them. Just know that very few of these missions gave me any trouble or were particularly difficult. Most deaths were more of a failure on my part than that of the game. Most. Even when I did get actually frustrated, it was mostly just due to me doing a lot of my recording at 2 AM because I make poor life decisions. Our first few missions see us causing some general mischief around Raleigh's compound. We smash a few priceless artifacts, jump around inside a comically oversized machine, and dodge a few lasers, all in the name of getting keys. Along the way, we learn that Raleigh's flying ship is actually the cause of the area's constant storm. By beautiful coincidence, everything we do to get the required keys also happens to mess with this storm generator, letting us feel like the moral good guy. Quick side note, remember demos? Those things we used to play to know if we actually might like the game before spending our parents' paychecks on it? Yeah, we don't get those anymore, but we used to, and this level was the demo for Sly Cooper, making it the only level in this game I have any familiarity with. There's no real reason for me pointing this out other than just being angry that demos don't exist anymore. Moving on. After causing enough of a ruckus for Raleigh, we eventually have enough keys to unlock this cannon. The next logical step is, of course, to hop inside and shoot ourselves like a ballistic missile into the flying ship so we can confront this dastardly amphibian. Contrary to how I usually handle talking about boss fights, I'm going to take these one at a time. The reason for this is that each fight is completely unique and uses a different gimmick other than just your standard smack him a few times to win. Take, for example, Mr. Frog here. We can't hit him while he's all bloated, and raccoons obviously can't swim, so what do? Well, if we hop around for a while, the frog deflates and we can give him a little smack, chopping a quarter off his health bar. This establishes the pattern of this fight. When he's big, do some dodges until he gets small, hit him 4 times, and we win. 1 down, 4 to go. Our boys goof off in cutscene form for a while before heading off to take down the next member of the 5, a very bad dog. Mugshot here isn't doing anything particularly fun other than just generally being a dick, so I'll take this time to talk about how Sly Cooper breaks up the normal platforming by virtue of certain missions of each world being a gimmick. These range from escorting Murray through a needlessly complex path with a stationary turret, to stopping a few crabs from grabbing boxes before you can, to using piranha as flamethrower fuel to light some candles. In general, I liked these missions. However, I would have liked them a lot more if they were all about half as long. Take the crabs for example. You need to collect 40 boxes before the crabs get 1. 40. Maybe it's just me, but even just hearing that I need to get 40 of something hurts. And we don't just touch the boxes, we have to shoot them a number of times while also dealing with the crabs. The concept of this mission is fine, but it overstays its welcome the moment we get box 21. The same idea rings true for most every other gimmick mission. The concept is fun, and the new playstyle is a great way to break up the platforming. They just require too much for what they are. It's a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things, but it's worth it to at least mention how I feel these missions could have been improved. So, 7 keys collected, time for the boss fight. That is an ugly dog. So Mugshot is an odd boss in my mind. He's got these big giant arms, so I just assume he'd try to punch or maybe even grab us. Instead, he keeps a relative distance and fires away with some machine guns. Our goal is to flip these mirrors around, making things just too hot and bright for his pale complexion and doing actual physical damage to him, which, I mean, same. Do this enough time and the dog goes down, much like the frog before him. Can someone get this writer a glass of water or something? Up next, we've got Miss Ruby, a crocodile voodoo priestess that I'm not fully convinced I'm actually allowed to talk about. But I'm going to anyway. The missions leading up to Miss Ruby and later on her boss fight are some of my least favorite so far. In theory, this should all be fine, just more platforming and a few gimmicks, but there are 2 major things bringing this whole area down for me. These ghosts and Miss Ruby herself. Don't get me wrong, I did still enjoy myself most of the time here, but when combat is this simple, endlessly spawning, kind of invisible ghost rats aren't a fun challenge, they're just an annoyance. Right now is also when I found myself no longer caring about these little bottles littered around. See, here's me not caring about this bottle. I've not talked about them yet, and that's because they just largely didn't matter, so I'll talk about them now. Each level has a number of messages in a bottle. Collecting all of them unlocks the safe placed somewhere in the area. Inside will be a page of the Thievius Raccoonus. Unlocking the page rewards you with a new, sometimes kind of useful ability. These abilities range from a little dive tackle to being able to roll, all the way to mid-jump bullet time. None of these are required to beat the game, and you can only have one active at any given point in time, mapped to the triangle button. If you care about completion, they're a fun reward for really searching through each level. If you don't, like me, then in my opinion you aren't really missing out on much. Anyway, what is this crocodile lady trying to do again? Summon an army of the undead to spread fear and panic throughout the world? Yeah, alright, I guess I'll put a stop to it. Hey, so I really hated this boss fight in particular. particular. So did Sly, given that he's lost all color during the cutscenes. To run you through how it works, Miss Ruby shoots voodoo magic at us, and we have to match her movements to dodge it and reach her to smack her with arcane. It's basically just a really weird game of Dance Dance Revolution. The problem, and the reason I lost like 15 lives here, is because sometimes the game just decides that I didn't hit the button I definitely hit, instantly killing me. Even this wouldn't be so bad, except for needing to watch these cutscenes again after each death and starting the whole fight over again from the beginning of phase 1 if you fail even one of these prompts. By the time I actually won, I was sweating in my chair coming up to the final inputs just hoping they wouldn't drop. So while I love the design and the concept for this fight, I cannot in good conscience say it is well made for those reasons alone. I still won though and felt real good about it. Up next is King Panda, a man so angry over being made fun of for some shitty pants he decided to commit mass murder with fireworks.
Would you look at that? A fireworks show! Oh my gosh, that's awful!
Alright, that one did actually get me. The King Panda section doesn't really stand out to me in any kind of special way. It's good, I like it as a whole, but it feels like they mostly just ran out of new gimmicks here and went back to what worked before. It isn't a bad thing, I just wished we'd maybe gotten a few new special mission types, or something at least for the second to last zone. While I fight some monkeys and collect the keys, I want to talk about how I feel about this game overall so far. I honestly think that the actual story here, the driving force taking us from zone to zone, is the weakest part of this game, mostly just because it's so simple. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, it more so just feels like Sucker Punch knew they couldn't release a mascot platformer without some kind of plot and did the bare minimum. What really sells this game for me is the characters. Sly is great, and his interactions with Bentley and Murray are the highlights of this experience. Couple this with the really stellar art direction and creative platforming, and I found myself actually not caring why I'm climbing this tower or beating this boss. I just wanted to see what the game came up with next. It's an odd feeling for me, coming fresh off of 70 plus hours in Baldur's Gate 3, which is a stellar game and is the reason this video took so long, I'm sorry, to find myself not caring about the story and really just engrossed in what I'm seeing and doing. Moving back to this game, King Panda is kind of tedious but still fun to fight. His whole theme was fireworks, so I expected that to play a part in things, but instead he's just a Coca-Cola bear mixed with the kid's kung fu instructor. Dodge the flames, make your way to him, and give him a few smacks between really well telegraphed attacks, and the bear goes down and can no longer murder entire villages with a 4th of July celebration. Well, that's 4 members of the fiendish 5 down, and if my math is correct, that means we're almost done. So what does the final level have to offer us? The final zone is actually completely unique. Instead of a hub we wander around in to find keys, we're taken through a series of missions automatically, all leading up to a final confrontation. First, we have a turret section filled with landmines, boulders, and robot birds intent on ruining my whole day. After that, we need to run over 60 computers to collect their data somehow, all before some gross slug monsters take things down. The next section is our first time actually controlling Sly here, and it's a short, moderately difficult stealth moment to rescue Carmelita Fox. This results in Sly getting gassed, and Bentley goes full Hackerman mode to save the day. Fox and Sly form a tense alliance to continue the journey, and the whole thing ends with a high-octane climb up a death ray as it sinks into the lava below. All of this was great, if a bit more frustrating than I was expecting, but you know, it is the final zone, so I have to expect some challenge here and there. But this is what we've all been waiting for, the final boss fight. Who could our mystery villain be?
Remarkable. You Coopers always find a way to beat me.
Well, it turns out it's a big robot bird named Clockwork, made immortal because he's just too angry to die. Jetpack ready, we take him on with the distant help of Carmelita Fox. The final confrontation against Clockwork is fine. I love the spectacle, but was hoping for more of a stealthy, thievery-inspired endeavor given the nature of what we're meant to be. A big, flashy, explosion-filled duel just isn't what I expected. Maybe it's just me, but every other boss felt like Sly understanding that he isn't a big strong hero, and he needed to find clever ways to approach the fights. We waited for opening, we dodged fireballs, and danced around atop a mosquito to beat everyone else. So seeing this felt a little bit off. It's still super fun, it's just out of place. Once we've knocked the bird around enough, he falls down and we need to approach and beat him with a stick before he repairs and gets away. Maybe it's just me, but I found that these often just kind of failed. As if the game decides, no, you didn't press that button actually. Yeah, I wasn't joking about that. This one section ruined the whole fight for me. Specifically this jump. I don't know if I was just doing something wrong, but this just refused to work for me like 90% of the time. I had to repeat this fight over and over again, from the very beginning mind you, all because Sly just wouldn't stick his little raccoon feet down on this ledge. Also, Clockwork kept saying,
I am.
Right here every time, and I never figured out what he meant.
Redirect energy. Come back! You will never be rid of me.
So Sly Cooper is over. Bentley tells us our work isn't done yet, and we get a little fun gag version of the intro cutscene if it were an anime, complete with full Japanese voiceover. I'm surprisingly really mixed on this title. At its core, I do think this is a good game. The mechanics are fun, the characters are great, and the style is impeccable. I just wish there was more to it. Maybe it's my fault for not getting the optional power-ups, but there really is very little to this game after what you've experienced by the end of World 2. I would still recommend playing this in 2023. You can't beat this kind of atmosphere. Just go into it with the right expectations and you can absolutely still have a blast. As always, let me know how horribly wrong I am in the comments below. Up next, as promised, is Ratchet Deadlocked and then Sly 2. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a like and subscribe if you're feeling extra spicy today. I'll see everyone next time.